Hello everyone, this is Fantastic Worlds, welcome back to Lovecraft Country and Secret World Interludes. Now, in the previous interludes, we covered in the besieged farmlands, the village of Harbaburesti, sorry about that, I've never really heard it pronounced, so I'm not quite sure how to say it, and the area that was occupied by the Soviets. But let's deal with the, actual besieged farmlands and the wilds beyond it. See, the game is sort of set up here on the map where the north is the end, which has the most connection to the rest of the world. And as you get further away from the north, you continue to get further away from civilization. Of course, Carmen, representative of the Council of Venice, is on the most northern edge, as you can pretty much see up here. And when we get down to here, the village represents the border between civilization and the wilds. This area over here is the area that was taken over by the Soviets with the observatory and, of course, the encampments. But here's where the actual most of the living of this community was before the invasion. Currently, it's being overrun by werewolves as the advanced troops of Lilith's army, but let's see what we can see of that area and, of course, of the wilds beyond it. Okay, there we go. Alright, so I'll be making liberal use of the stealth mode to get through a lot of this, because we are in occupied territory. As you can see, the area down here still has the 1970s form of wiring and street lamps, as it were, although it should be called more road lamps. But as you can see, the area is completely and utterly overrun. Also notice that we have two types of monsters here. Now, the monsters are the werewolves from the invading force and the scarecrows. Now, the scarecrows are supposed to be guardians in some fashion. They are actually fashioned from the, the organs of human beings within those golem-like bodies. And since they have such a wide variety of tools and weapons and magical abilities, and we've seen where their origins are, we know that they were created by at least one of the farmers here. And speaking of the farms, you can see that the farm is the typical combination of what you might accumulate over centuries of use, with both the ancient structures, probably unchanged since nearly the Dark Ages, simply upgraded one at a time, adding by piece modern technology as it's needed. Now, obviously, they only can afford what they actually need, so you'll see they have vehicles, and they'll have electric lights, but they will still be using the wooden shutters and the foundations, as well as tiled roofs of the older era. The barns themselves, again, reflect more of the ancient style than the modern. Excuse me, guys, I'm coming through. Yes, running through the fields, getting attacked by people with shotguns. I feel like somebody who's just violated a farmer's daughter. Alright, so I'm pretty sure if I go far enough, they won't bother me. But as you can see, the fields here... God damn it, the stealth is just not kicking it. The fields here are, of course, where the actual crops that produce just give me a second. Alright, guys, alright, fine. Have a little fire, Scarecrow. Anyways, the fields themselves... Oh, you want some? Fine. You could have done some help against the werewolves. This makes you wonder what exactly they're designed for. If they weren't actual guardians, which, they'd be attacking the werewolves if they are, did some farmer, like Henderson in Kingsmith, just go completely batshit and decide to make these things so he can kill all his neighbors? Or, make sure they never come across his land. But anyways, yes, you have the hay fields, you have, of course, the rows of produce here, the actual farmlands themselves that the village requires to survive, so they're not actually dependent on outside. Now, remember, in one of the previous interludes, the forest god said that they were, agreements, territory. The farmlands belong to the people, which is why you're not getting a ton of Fae here. You're just getting the invaders and the constructs. So as long as the people stayed in these fields and cultivated, they were left mostly alone by the Fae. But however, the Soviets were not as kind. As you can see, just across this river here. Oh, God's sakes. Dude, where did you come from? I'm not sure why Irreverent is here, but He could be the shade of the sorcerer that created the damn, well, those things. Anyways, so yeah, as you can see, the Soviets set up a toxic waste disposal facility here. And the ghouls, which apparently feed on and possibly worship pollution to become stronger, are unearthing them all, and of course contaminating the local water supply, which is going to be an issue the community is going to have to deal with, assuming after the invasion's dealt with. Now, if you go by the storyline, the B you play disrupts the command structure of the invasion to a great degree, which means that, of course, the invasion probably falls apart when the vampire factions turn on each other. But remember, we are currently locked in space-time, so that means that we end up coming through the... how do we say this? We end up coming through at the crisis point, wherever we come back through the time portal. Alright, guys. You coming? Alright, fine. Sigh. Alright, guys. As you can see, we still have the old bridges. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of the New England in the real world, and you still have ancient bridges functional that are still the ones being used, although I wouldn't put automobile traffic over that one. But as you can see, the water itself is the river itself. What's carrying the pollution is called the Lover's Creek, which, of course, as we know from one of the bonus episodes, Death and Axes is haunted by, the murdered souls of people like that. Anyways, yeah, lovers can have dark legacies. The rivers all lead to the mill. Now, the thing is, again, they're still using ancient technology. Mills exist, either water or wind, in order to grind grains like wheat into flour so that people can use them to, of course, make bread, which is probably the primary staple of the community here besides milk and meat. So the mill itself uses the water to move these, well, when it's not disabled, to move these wheels, which move these giant stones inside of it that you put the grain on to grind it into powder, which is kind of a tricky thing. As you know, the wheels never stop, so you got to have a pretty good sense of timing to get it in and out. Now, you can't actually get inside of this mill unless you're doing a specific mission. But you can get into... Anyways, that's the rain cloud kitty. I figured it'd be appropriate since this place always seems to be raining, and of course it's not raining. And as you can see, that the mill itself is using the power of the water to do so. So, we're talking Dark Age technology, but hey, the oldest technologies are the ones that require least maintenance, and things still working. There's also a windmill we'll cover as well, which I can show you the internal workings of the mill. But as you continue down the river and get further and further south, we start moving into the wilds. Now, this area was controlled by the Fae, but as you can see, there was an attempt by humans to colonize this area. This is the remains of Our Lady Monastery, which... Oh, that's good. Which, once upon a time likely was a standard monastery, but was corrupted by Lilith when she offered the monks immortality to serve her. And, she gave it to them in a way. They're now essentially wraiths wandering around, hovering off the ground and doing random things. I mean, it's like the mummies that we saw in Egypt. See, I can kill them, but they just kind of dissolve, and they'll be back eventually, is the auras that... Yeah, you can't kill them, because she did give them immortality, but like the mummies in Egypt, they don't have minds anymore, because the human mind isn't capable of withstanding that much information. Hell, the body's dissolved, and only the magic holding them together remains. The bees, like me, are different, is that we were completely recreated from the ground up, to have the collective mind to function, with all this additional information, plus, of course, a body made entirely of anima, which can withstand the energies that we generate. There's also, like I said in one of the other interludes, probably going to discover that we cannot, in any way, shape, or form, retain this body forever and eventually become one of the disembodied intelligences within the buzzing itself. But let's talk... Let's talk to the local lady of the wilds here, Kukavea. Hi, dude. Or dudette. Couldn't tell on the run by. As you can see, she's quite important as she's guarded by the Green Guard, aka, satyrs. As you can see, she's been here a while.
Stand out there and loiter. Come inside.
I wasn't loitering. I just was doing a monologue. Okay, Kukavea. She is, of course, the owl lady, the one that transforms into the owl that you see from time to time, and the sort of impromptu guardian of this zone of the Transylvanian woods. Now, she represents the positive aspects of the Wyld. She's the lighter half of the Fae, as it were, as well as the Greenman. She's dangerous, but she's not malicious. And she's also, like I said, working against the evils. But let's get her story, shall we? From herself.
Oh, I don't like to talk about myself much. I'm not so interesting, in all honesty. I'm old. I live in a tree. Sometimes I turn myself into an owl and hunt mice.
Well, that's one way to keep your protein content up. To my right, by the way, I'll show you later, there's also some skinned hares, which that's how she feeds herself. She's essentially can turn to her predator and get whatever meat she needs, and I'm not sure how much she actually needs. Usually, I'd have to say that even an immortal required ingestion of protein to keep their body functioning as we wear out. Mine, of course, is made of pure energy, which means I technically don't have to eat, and the only effect food has on me is to temporarily boost my energy levels.
I used to be someone, but that was a long, long time ago, and I don't care to remember. It was a different age, and the world has moved on. Now I live in a tree and make tea out of bark.
You could have a hell of an Instagram.
Life's a funny old thing, isn't it?
I mean, you could sell that tea probably online pretty well. I'm sure Amazon will get out here somehow. Anyways, yeah, she's from the first age, which means that assuming an age is 4 to 6,000 years, which seems to be appropriate here, she's probably 15,000 years old, which means that like most immortals of that age, she's not going to remember details very well, specific things. She may not even remember anything other than concepts. It's one of the reasons why immortals have a slight advantage in the fact that they will die, which you can say that's advantage or not, and their minds will essentially reset. What happens after that point is, of course, up to your belief structure. If you think consciousness continues in any fashion, but it gets an opportunity to release, shall we say, the identity, the accumulated traumas. Immortals do not. We just accumulate them again and again and again and have to somehow decide how we're going to function in such a world. Now, of course, she is saying that probably she's calling herself an artifact, which means an object outside of time, which I always find is kind of strange that like Dungeons and Dragons call inside artifacts or entities objects of great power, but in reality the word just means something that's no longer relevant.
I can barely recall when I first landed on the branches of this tree. It's so long ago. I was chasing someone from my past, from a different age. Someone who hurt my closest and dearest friend, my sister.
Okay, that person she's chasing is Lilith. We know that from lore fragments and such, which means that it's been a theory that what happens is in order Lilith, who was a human of the first age, which would mean she's the same sort of class that we consider mythical, entities like Adam and such, which means she would be incredibly long-lived and powerful and intelligent even then as one of the original prototypes of the human race, but she was still mortal. So it's been suggested that she vivisected Kukuve's sister to gain the secrets of immortality, which is why she's still bugging us all 15,000 years later. So Kukuvea went into vengeance mode for the first stage and just wore out because, well, two immortals locked in conflict, you can't kill each other. You can just mess with each other. The best you can do is imprison them. And Kukuvea decided that she didn't want to become that entity, so ruthless and powerful as Lilith, to be able to defeat her.
I hunted her for so long, I almost forgot who I was.
As I was saying?
So I decided to stay. I decided I could do more good here than elsewhere.
Well, yeah, that's her right. She decided that she'd rather be a guardian than vengeance.
And I decided to stop hunting and start living. This has been a good place to live. At least, until now.
Yes, well, that's what invasions do, unfortunately.
I don't care much about your politics and intrigue. It matters very little in the scope of things. And there are more important things in life than power and prestige. I hope you'll learn that someday.
From one older immortal to a younger, newer immortal, trying to give us a bit of a life advice to transition and such. Yeah, she's just a woman who has seen the Roman Empire come and go. You know, I'm sure that in the Roman Empire, from day to day, the politics and intrigue were very important, but as she can see, it all came to a pile of dust in the end anyways. So what exactly was it all for? The suffering, the horror, the colonization, invasion, just so you can have a bunch of ruins in Rome?
Your secret world is my regular world. It's always been like that here. No walls between the mystical and magical and that of the mundane.
Well, yeah, she's referring to the fact that Harbaburesti is on the borderland between the Wyld and the normal world, which means that these people know of each other and simply choose to coexist, because the humans are not trying to exploit the Fae, and the Fae do not want anything from the humans. Really come down to it.
In all honesty, I don't know too much about your normal world anymore. I left it so long ago. And while I'm curious about it, I don't think I could ever go back. But from the look of things, if we continue down this path, that might not be an option anymore.
Are we talking the fictional apocalypse or 2020? Because god damn. Yeah, those are the hairs I was talking about, as well as books. I love a fellow book reader.
There.
Hello again. You're getting senile. I was just here. And of course, all the hand-carved wooden furniture. I mean, the woman's got time. Odds are she's probably made all the candles and the structures here. And even I'm guessing these guys chopped up the firewood, because it'd be only be kind to the guardian of the forest to do that. But yeah, as you can see, this tree is parked next to one of the, let's see this way, as one of the nexus points, that the Agarthan energy wells. Now, anyways, let's talk about what the filth has been doing around here. I think where do we need to go for that? Yep, over here and to the left. All right, over on the left side, you can see that there is another one of those heart trees. Remember, we have a smaller one outside the owl and the eagle. I thought it was called the Green Man, but it's an entirely different fictional structure. We have another heart tree down here, but this one's been corrupted by filth. As a result, all of the fawns that were connected to it have in fact become corrupted as well. So yeah, this is what filth does. It resets things to a more primordial, vicious, and predatory nature. Yeah, I'm not staying here for too long. And now they are guarding this tree as the source of the power. So they have become essentially enslaved by the filth, which is a terrible way to go. Anyways, we'll pop up. Now this section over here on the east side is pretty much covered. So I'm going to pop over to the west side. Start showing you things that are a little more on the side of the mundane as opposed to the magical in their own way. Hang on a second. Okay, so you remember the Hollander Mill and our two favorite French girls with a chainsaw and rifle that probably have a secret crush on each other. But unfortunately, we're not going to get much from them. Yeah, they've got dialogue, but it's in French.
En vacances. Et là, il n'y a plus que les filles, qui sont au mauvais endroit, au plus mauvais moment, et qui voudraient rentrer chez elles.
C'est mon frère qui a voulu venir ici. Je ne sais pas comment il a entendu parler de cet endroit, ni pourquoi il tenait à y aller, mais en tout cas, on a suivi le mouvement, et il a disparu.
On n'a plus qu'à se battre, en espérant qu'on arrive à se tirer d'ici.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know much French. About one word out of 20, I understand. But even if I have some viewers that are that know French, I don't think it's fair to the rest of them to make them have to sit through all of this, unfortunately. I looked for translations, and I would have read them off to you, but they don't seem to be online. And since there's no bar down below there for dialogue for whatever reason, I can't, unfortunately, tell you what they're saying. So, yeah, we're going to skip this part for a moment. But, as I was talking about, missed, the interior of the mill. You can see right here, this is a windmill, which uses the force of the wind rather than the water to move it. It's less predictable, unfortunately, but as you can see, the interlocking wooden gears and such lead down to a lower level where they have the millstones. And down here is where those millstones are. This is how they used to do it. They used to just line up the piles of grain here, wait for this thing to crush it a couple of times, and quickly sweep it up while it's on the floor and put it into bags. You know, it's not the most sanitary version, but if you're talking about 14th century, yeah, probably the best you're going to be able to do. And they're still completely and utterly functional, which means probably they're being used. Now, this one I don't think is being used as well, because we know that it's soaking in animatic energy and once was occupied by a sorcerer. That if you activate the right runes up there, you end up in an extra dimensional pocket he created, in which he still haunts, in which he tapped it for his experiments, which while may have been against nature, may have been against nature and such, they are, well, they've been relatively benign compared to the other stuff we usually deal with. And I think you've come across his spirit at least a couple of times in here. Yep. Yeah. All right. No, that's not the section. And you can see, I do love the animation on this. They do not forget any detail. It actually looks like it's a functional windmill. And you can see all the moving parts from the wind-driven, shall we say, primitive turbines out here to the lovely, well, Alps, which the Carpathian Fangs section we are. And yeah, this is where crows mean reverence, which means this is where the reverend is. You can see the observatory from here as well. You know, this is a hell of a draw radius. And yep, and the remnants of these things. You'll notice, by the way, there really isn't... the wind isn't moving this shit. Look at it. It's so small compared to the width of the weight of this thing. Yeah, it's the anima well down below. The most... Probably the sorcerer's greatest ability was to convert animatic energy into kinetic energy of the mill, which could also be theoretically hooked up to an electrical generator. You know, all this shit that Oriachi is going through, trying to extract anima directly from the earth for a infinite power source. The thing is, you could have just done this. Oops. You could have just done this. Do it on an industrial level. Have a windmill that have the perpetual motion generator, produce electricity, put 100 of them out, make it environmentally friendly. Boom, you're done. But nope. Or actually, Samuel has to do things the hard way. Anyways, let's pop down here. Ah, love those magic bee powers. Oh, hello, fellow looks red. Usually means that's one of the Templars. Anyways, checking the map. All right, so let's head off this section. Then we're going to go check off the other person that we can talk to that doesn't speak French, which is the first of the Draculesti that you're going to meet in this zone. She is an advanced scout and a bitter loner is the best way of putting her. The thing is, there isn't a lot on her. There's a couple of speeches that she gives during her missions. There's also the fact that there's a couple times she's mentioned in random dialogue. One of the mentions being is that she is either a lesbian or bisexual, which, of course, in a patriarchal society like this could be one of the reasons she's chosen to outcast herself. A tribe like this that has small numbers is going to be dependent on the women reproducing. And there are some ways around that. I mean, obviously, she could simply agree to raise a child, for the clan, but not take the man as her husband. But hey, that's a thing. Alright, Zaha. Now, Zaha thinks she's like the ultimate scout, but there's a webcam pointed directly at her, and this is like the worst concealed blind I have ever seen, and she's wearing, you know, really bright colors. I don't think she's got the idea of how... I don't think she's got the idea of how, scouting in the field's supposed to go. But let's hear it from her. A comment.
My story? It should be like this. I am Romany. I hunt monsters. I wish that was all there was to say. I did not want to become like this. A witch.
Okay, here's the thing. Honestly, I've never heard the Draculesti be really upset about magic users. After all, we are magic users, and they have zero issues with us, as we're bound to Gaia in her defense. But the other thing is that, frankly, if there was a witch, they have more power on their side. My guess is that she's kind of disgusted by it, because the only magic she's seen, until recently, is on the enemy side. I mean, she doesn't have a teacher. It's pretty obvious if you try to do the cost of magic mission that her use of magic is highly ritualistic, which usually tends to be those who don't have a instinctive command of their power. In other words, she can't summon and use power directly. She has to use sort of the equivalent of magical technology. All right, and empowered herself. But it's really kind of a level of self-loathing of a deal of magic that we have not seen in any other character before.
But you are an outsider. You cannot understand, just as I cannot be like you. The bright tunnels beneath the earth, I have seen them. In the cities, the show-offs in their uniforms, I have seen them.
Right, she's referring to the Agarthian tunnels, which she can see to get to access the Hollow Land, but without being a bee or an entity of great power, she cannot enter Agartha, as it's more of a state of being than a real physical place. And number two, she's referring to the other orders, plus Oriochi and the other people who have concentrated magical power, which she's envious of, because they have much more power and control, and of course been taught. Now, I was never taught because the bee essentially downloaded magical protocols into me from, of course, the previous bee's discoveries. And the thing is that there was a cost to it, of course. I've lost probably like a good chunk of my personality to do so, and probably a limited lifespan. So the question is, magic is an act of transformation, and it always has a price, which, cost of magic refers to. In her case, this is more psychological than real, because she cannot deal with the fact. In fact, she's not using magic really effectively. She has us use magic.
Your people call themselves heroes, but for generations my people have died unknown in the mud, fighting the terrors of the night. For the longest time we were slaves in this country. Slaves, even if we kept the beasts from the doors of those who abused us. Okay, now we're dealing with real-world issues. Soviets did not treat the Romanai well, and even to this day, the Eastern European bloc in Russia still does not treat them well, to the point where in Poland they're passing legislation to ban Romanai from jobs and cities, which is, of course, feeling mildly stalked here, which of course is the reason, which is sort of the build up to what they used to be done in the 1930s Germany, which means this is not going to go well for everybody. In this fictional universe, with the Romanai being secret attackers of the secret defenders of the people themselves, contrasting that to the immense amount of persecution that they have means they're getting it from both sides. Probably why the Romanai stay here in the valley as a sanctuary, because it's the one place where the truce between humans and the Fae and the absence of now Soviet rule makes them safe. Do I know you? We do not ask for recognition. We answer only to ourselves, and that makes us strong. We know who we are. I did know. Until magic changed me. I think you understand that story. Not sure as a bee we can never go back to our human existence. And frankly, you could have a really good life as a mortal magician. You're just a human plus at this point. It's not really as terrible as... No, I don't know this person. Oh well. No idea where they're chilling. Okay. To come to this valley, it is like a holy pilgrimage for my clan, for the Draconists. Milosh, he says this place is our homeland, but he was born on the roads, just like all of us. He means that our order began here. The Order of Dracula, the dragon. Right, yes, of course. In this sort of scenario, the Dracula set up the Romanai as his inheritors. Now, this is a lot like in Egypt, where you have the modern equivalent of the... I've forgotten who they are. But yeah, the people, the order that was there to fight against the rise of the Black Pharaoh. Again, the same sort of cycle repeats here. As their order became weaker, both sides, and evil began to rise, Gaia threw us in to help the fight. This time around, however, they didn't seem to be expecting us. I mean, Milosh says, "Great, it's good to see you," but they didn't really have a person waiting for us at the entrance like they did in Egypt. And they call him Strigoi now? A vampire? They do not know anything about history, about the secrets we have sworn to protect. Dracula hated all creatures of the shadows. He fought them. He died to protect us all. It makes me sad that the valley where Dracula made his stand against them has become their secret refuge.
Well, it's probably them just pissing on his grave. Vlad Tepes, a.k.a. Dracula. Dracula is, by the way, a title as opposed to a name. Vlad Tepes is a controversial figure in Roman in Transylvanian history, which, by the way, was not his primary place of rulership. It was just one of the counties, I guess the best way to put it, that he controlled. Yeah. Vlad Tepes was a psychopath who used to like to watch peasants slide down sharpened stakes while he ate his breakfast at times, which of course is why he's called the Impaler. Also, at one point, he decided there were too many poor people, so he invited them to a feast at the church, sealed the doors while they're in there and burned it down, ethnic cleansing. And on the other hand, he defended his country against the Turkish Ottoman Empire, which of course was Muslim versus Christian, imperialistic religions got to do what they got to do. And he was said that his rule was so harsh you could carry a bag of gold from one end to his kingdoms to the other without being assaulted, because, well, if the guy who does the law enforcement is the sort that likes to enjoy watching people slowly die, you don't want to really piss him off. Now, in the dark ages of that period of time, in those barbaric times, you could say that was necessary, but it still comes off as pretty horrible, as a man essentially engaging in his own twisted pleasures and then using the state to provide for them.
Here, the creatures live as if no time has moved on. As if wild animals still walk city streets and people huddle around fires muttering prayers. The villagers accept it. They shrug their shoulders and say the night has teeth.
Always
the
has.
old forest is no place for men. Or women.
Yeah, there's agreements. The Fae get the forest, you get the area around it.
You see what has happened. Monsters cannot exist alongside us. There will only be peace. Our duty will only be finished when they are all destroyed.
Aha.
And what is left for the Romany when the monsters are gone? I think I would like to have a bookstore then.
Yeah, hi. Here's one of the things I've noticed throughout history. The Romani were victims of genocide, still are victims of attempted genocide, yet she just proposed genocide. A lot of times the trauma that is inflicted by these sort of generations of oppression will manifest as believing the only time to be safe would be to return the favor. She is saying that she wipe out all supernatural beings, including the Fae, and then they'll be safe. They'll be completely mundane forest. Nothing evil will ever happen. Well, first, that doesn't work that way, because the anima energy would regenerate a lot of the Fae, like me, back into existence, as long as the power sources remain. And number two, it's rude. Unfortunately, there are predators in the world. I mean, even humans these days are brought down by wild animals. Hell, right at the time of this recording, there is a pod of orcas that is attacking pleasure boats on the west coast in an organized fashion. I think Mother Nature has just gotten pissed lately. And of course, viruses, like the coronavirus, are predators. It's the nature of the world. Now, with things like the filth that are unnatural and come outside of our frame of reference of reality and threaten it, they should be opposed. But the rest, it's a balance. I mean, let's face it, if the mice got together, they'd like to make the cats extinct. But if they did so, their population would explode and they'd start starving out after they ate all of their resources. And we went over, or will go over, depending on how you're seeing this, how the supernatural predation is probably part of the cycle of calling humanity of the foolish.
We Romani are a traveling people. There is never resting, never staying in one place longer than we must. Life is just a stop between new roads, sharpening stakes, comparing scars. Sundown is always coming somewhere.
It's true. And the thing is, that sort of edginess, that sort of preparation, sort of paranoia is the balance between wariness and madness. In other words, PTSD is what she's referring to, and what she is suffering from, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is, like all disorders, simply a collection of, shall we say, symptoms that nobody really can identify the number one cause. Of course, stress is it. Either it be abuse or warfare or abandonment. And a constant level of stress will grind a person out of the idea that they are ever safe. They were always in fight or flight mode, which does some serious damage to both the mind and body. But considering the violent nature of humanity is unfortunately becoming more and more common. So she's suffering out. You can actually hear it in the edge of her voice when the voice actor is doing this, is that she is constantly on edge, fearing everything, because monsters could pop out of anywhere. And it could be one of the reasons she's not that good at scouting is that she's become sloppy due to this stress. And she needs therapy, seriously, or just to chill and go back to the clan and let other people handle this job. She needs to be taken out of the field.
It has been, I think, 15 years without my parents. I measure time by the changing of trucks and cars and caravans. A sickness took my mama, and my papa, I do not know what took him. He left one morning to hunt, and he never came back.
That can happen, unfortunately. The hunter can be hunted. But yes, again, also parental abandonment. Not by their choice, mind you. But yeah, additional levels of stress. Because childhood trauma in warfare are the number one, probably the number one and number two causes of PTSD.
My papa and my ma are remembered well in the clan, so I keep that memory alive. You see, I am both of them now. Memory is important to the Romani, to know who we are and why we fight, why we are proud. And every winter there are fewer of us. In a good winter, we make sure there are 2 times as few monsters.
Yeah, again, we went over or will go over, depending on how you're seeing this, the concept of bringing narrative forward, that if you keep the stories of a person alive, you keep them alive as well in the collective memory. And the other thing is that she is still stuck in the PTSD mode where she knows that the world is grinding against her people, and eventually they will be rendered extinct if they do not assimilate to another culture, but that's up to them. Unfortunately, everything has its time, and we are currently the living representation of the fact that this is the apocalypse, because that's when the bees are summoned, and that everything is changing. So the Romani are unlikely to survive. As they are. They may become the seeds of another culture, or their culture may become embedded in another. But anyways, there's a couple things down here I wanted to show you as well. One of which is kind of a holdover from the previous interlude, which is the one dealing with the Soviets, because I wanted to show you something kind of interesting that was very important when I was younger. It's probably just a relic now. If you look down at these, we'll deal with the one on the left, but on the right, if you look up these structures over here, you will find, if you go to further down long enough on this one, that they're using old Soviet vehicles. And the vehicle they're using here, by the way, although it's not immediately apparent, this double tread system right here, this is a launcher for a nuclear weapon. Now, I'm pretty sure the weapon itself has been removed because of several treaties and the fact that, well, it's 60 years old and probably non-functional. But it used to be in the Soviet Union, they were terrified that the United States would target all of their launchers and destroy them before they could react, thus, of course, making them completely helpless. Whether that was possible or not is something else entirely. But in order to do so, they put these nuclear weapons on treads, and they moved them around a lot in the forest. Now, it was always a constant battle of wits between the Western powers and spy satellites to identify these locations and keep them updated, and the Soviets to keep moving around. Now, the reason I bring this up is it's still going on today. North Korea is still doing the same thing. They have the same technology. I'm pretty sure that any other Soviet bloc does as well. The Americans don't do this as much because we have the submarine fleets to do that for us. We keep the nuclear submarines in the water. They're kind of hard to track, and they can launch at a moment's notice. This is still the world we live in. You still have a Cold War sort of mentality going on. But over here, we're dealing with the other legacy of the Cold War. Now, you'll notice that this pond doesn't look terribly natural, and it's filled with toxic waste barrels, and these guys are digging them up. That's because this is not a pond. This is an artificial Sacred Heart Lake. Yeah, this is an artificial pond. It's been expanded from the original Sacred Heart Lake in this structure here. And as you can see, the green glows down below is used as a disposal. The nuclear waste that helped create both the technology for the weapons and, of course, the nuclear power plants that the Soviet Union is probably still using right now, unless they go, full Chernobyl. That was a hell of a time to be alive. Then go full Chernobyl and do a meltdown. But we don't really. The thing is that in this case, what both the United States and other Western powers that use nuclear power and the Soviet bloc did is they simply took those barrels over there, put the nuclear waste in, filled them with concrete, and dumped them in the water, and hoped they never hear from again. In fact, I remember one specific individual telling me, well, they'll collapse in, the sediment will pull them down, and we'll never see them again, and there will never be a problem. Except idiots. Metal rusts, concrete breaks open, and it all comes out. So we'll be dealing with this legacy for millennia. Gods. But in any case, let's say one last stop before we probably call this one an episode. Might be a bit short for interlude, but we've kind of gone over a lot of stuff. We've kind of gone over a lot of stuff in this area that's just kind of scattershot around. Now you can see, of course, the van tracks. It's part of a mission to track down our old friends, the Oriochi. Now, of course, we see the van here as part of the kidnap squad for killing children. I'm not getting too close because it causes a spawn. And, of course, the people who were slaughtered by some supernatural being, in this case, one of the vampires. They were actually never seem to equip their people, and that's because of part of what Samuel actually believes about humans. Now, that's not going to be covered until we get to the end of the Tokyo mission, because Samuel is a completely complex character, maybe even more so than Lilith. Lilith, we understand that she's ambitious. She was a human, she became an immortal through horrific means, and she created armies of beings in multidimensional nature over and over again for one simple reason: she doesn't want to die. That's it. She wants immortality, and she wants power, and she wants to be a queen and accepted as the goddess of the universe. She wants to replace Gaia, so which makes her probably among the fallen. Samuel, however, is a different type of fallen, whereas Lilith is a mortal origin, he is an immortal. Like I said, when we get to dealing with Oriochi deep dives, we'll deal with him. But in any case, Oriochis, this is the children kidnap squads for the Romani and probably the village for experimentation. We saw the bodies of some of those as we passed through here. And when we get to the shadowy forest, we'll deal with the laboratory and its legacy in a bit. That was an added DLC mission. But until then, I'm probably going to call the mission here. There isn't a lot more left here. There's more farmland in this section here, and of course there's the damn layer, which I'm not which I don't have the ability to do anything about. But yeah, that's pretty much the thematic structure of what we're dealing with. Sorry about that. Had to interrupt recording for a moment there. But yes, this is Fantastic World saying farewell from Lovecraft Country and Secret World Interludes. And if you like this episode, please like, share, subscribe. And there's more than one reason to do that. Not only does it help the algorithm find my channel, also every 25 subscribers unlocks an additional bonus episode for the Secret World. But usually this is one of the investigation missions that, while not part of the main narrative, will expand on the backstory of the Secret World itself. And of course, that unlocks an additional Lovecraftian audio story narrated by yours truly, or another one of his contemporaries in cosmic horror. And, of course, if you really like this episode, down below are links to the Gumroad payment platform, and there's even additional reason to do that, because we are only $1 away from the stretch goal of the Secret World Lore Hunter series, in which I will create a second character whose primary purpose is to collect all those lore nuggets from around the world, the game world here, and to show you the backstory to the backstory of the Secret World. So if you're interested in that, please, like I said, $1 away. Anyways, I will see you next time.
You will see the dawning of a new age. To be a monarch or a beggar. To lose everything or to become a god. To stand with us or against us. The choice